We're back, and my next guest is Jasveer Singh Dongi with his book The Hunter Genesis, Books 1 and 2. Jasveer is an author, podcast host, behavioral trainer, and award-winning health and safety professional. He loves the outdoors and is a big movie buff, which is quite evident given the use of the quotes and songs from movies and strategic places in all of his books. He's an avid observer of his surroundings and uses characters and instances from everyday situations for his stories. He started writing in 2018 with his childhood memoir, version 1.5. Since then, he's published a total of 9 books and co-authored 2. Though he calls himself an accidental author, his books have been well received. Jasveer's literary prowess has garnered widespread acclaim, punctuated by a string of accolades and recognition. His magnum opus, The Hunter Genesis, Book 1, found its place among the coveted list of summer must-reads by many platforms. And Jasveer is here today to talk about The Hunter Genesis, Book 1 and Book 2. Welcome, Jasveer.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
How did you become, as you say, an accidental author?
So here's the thing. Books and me, we were never good friends. After the college, I hardly read any books. I've got this learning issue, which makes very hard for me to concentrate. This has been a problem since childhood. Never diagnosed correctly, but then, it's been always there. But I'm an avid writer. I have always written a book, written a journal. I've always maintained a journal. My father always encouraged all 3 of us, my brothers and my brother and my sister, to maintain a journal, and that's how writing started. And I had no idea that I had a book in the making. One of my friends, who's an author, Chetan Singh, God bless his soul, he passed away in 2021 because of COVID. He saw my journal only by accident. And he said, these are good words. Why haven't you published it? I said, published? That was my first reaction. I laughed. A person who's never read a book and him becoming an author, but he persisted. And finally we cut short one of the journals, which was all about childhood memories. That became my first book, version 1.5. He was the one who was instrumental in pushing me. And before publishing that book, I made it a point to read books. So I read a lot of books, and within a span of about 1 or 2 odd months, I read books, and that got me curious. I can do this. That's what I thought. And somebody who had no literary background became an author. So version 1.5, that's why I call it an accidental author.
Well, it surely is accidental. For those of us who have never read, or for those of the audience who have never read Hunter Genesis 1 and 2, can you give our audience a brief synopsis of the storyline?
I've always been a big fan of the action, adventure, treasure hunting genre, superheroes. I love Marvel, I love DC. And back in 2019, I hadn't moved to Canada. I was still in India. I was contemplating about a character, a series actually. I wanted to create a bona fide Indian superhero. And then I moved to Canada in 2020. It took me over a year to create Hunter Genesis. The only thing was I hated putting my superhero, in the 2020s, 2024 for that matter. I started thinking about the timelines. What timeline should I choose? It should be a chaotic time. It should be a time of great change. That's the reason I chose 18th century. I did a lot of research. I found out a lot about 18th century India. Although we study history in detail, but then for this I did a lot of research and placed my story over there, and it worked fantastically well. So I've used real life situations from 18th century, real characters, real names of the kings, the places, and that's how I created the story for Hunter Genesis. So it's a treasure hunt story based in 18th century India and beyond, of course.
What happens?
So he's now that the books are out, I can actually share that with the world. He's a superhero. He's regaining his memory. People have found him. He has no idea about his past. But during the course of the journey, he is finding about himself. And he's older than he thinks. Book 2 is all about, the last chapter is all about his journey right from the beginning till the end, which is like thousands of years of world history, uh, going into paragraphs. Uh, that's what I love about history. You can learn a lot, and I've learned a lot about history. Used it in my story, real life situations, like you said. I love that. And finally, they do find the treasure, which is the ultimate power in the world. And the question is, how would they use it in part three? The team.
Yeah, you said something about an adventure genre. Don't you think it's a bit more in the fantasy genre, or would you agree with that or not?
The fantasy part starts a bit later in the book. So it starts with adventure. It's, I'd say, action, adventure, fantasy, superhero genre, uh, all sort of mashed into a single story. I wanted to make it long lasting. I wanted to make it go from one book to another book to another book. So instead of creating the world, I used the 18th century. That helped me a lot. That made my life easy as an author because I had a lot of things, a lot of characters which I could just pick and choose and place it in my story. You're right. It's fantasy. Book 2 is all fantasy, but book 1 is a combination of lot of gunfighting, lot of action, lot of adventure, and of course, the superhero stuff comes in to the book 2 when they do find the treasure, which is like the ultimate power, ultimate weapon ever created, or weapons ever created uh, from Indian mythology. It's one of the most famous Indian mythologies, one of the most how would I say, one of the most devastating battle when they were used about 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. Same weapons are around in 18th century. So that's the excitement that I wanted to create for book 3, and hopefully I've been able to do that.
Yeah. So you would say multiple genres.
Multiple genres all in one.
Now, how important is it your Indian heritage and cultural background in writing this series and complementing your pretty vivid writing imagination? How does the background of your culture play into this?
So here's the thing. Here's a fact about Indians. Indians know more about the world than the world knows about Indians. In terms of history, in terms of the past, present, the future, Indians are very well accustomed to the world. I mean, that's how our education system is. It's pretty robust. We learn about the Americas, we learn about the Europe, we learn about Africa, we learn about the whole world. That's how our curriculum is when it comes to history, geography, or in, for that matter, civics. We talk about revolution, the American revolutions. We talk about the foundation of Canada in our history books. So that ways Indians are more informed, and that has sort of helped me when I moved to Canada and I started creating Canadian stories. I sort of combined that point of view, that global point of view, with the Canadian point of view, and I created a book called The Incredible Mr. Sweets, which is about an aging gangster who's just coming out. He's got his Indian heritage on one side, and he became a gangster. So he's finding his roots. He becomes a singer. He wanted to become a singer when he became a gangster. He's known as Mr. Sweets in the gangster circle. So, that's so. I have combined that. I was there for 39 years. Then I moved to Canada. I'm 44 now. I'm going to be 44 this year now. So, that experience is always going to be there. That's always going to stay in the heart. But how do I merge it with my Canadian experience now that I've been here and I'm going to live here? That's what I'm doing. And I think I've been doing it seamlessly well, but the readers can tell me if I'm correct or not.
You are listening to author Jasveer Singh Dongi on Writers for Readers on Chop FM 102.7. What are the differences between book 1 and book 2? How would you describe the difference between the first go at it and the second go at it? What's different about them?
So before I say that, I recommend to all aspiring authors to not publish a book without getting it edited from a proficient editor. And this is what happened to me with Hunter Genesis. When I gave it to the editor, it was about 70,000 words. And she said, you know what? And I hadn't thought about a series. I mean, I was thinking about a series, but I couldn't sort of move past book 1 back then. And she said, you've got 2 books right here. And book 1 actually became 2. So book 1, Hunter Genesis, whatever it is, wherever it is, he'll find it. And then book 2, Hunter Genesis Revelation. That actually used to be one book.
Ah.
And thanks to the editor, now book 1 is about 60,000 words and book 2 is close to about 100,000 words. All thanks to them. So I would recommend everybody to go for professional editing. It really helps because they know the business. They know how to develop the story. And if you can get a development editor, genre specific, that's really good. So Hunter Genesis is all about finding the past, the book 1. He has no idea about his past and it ends at a cliffhanger. There are no powers which are revealed. Bits and pieces, it comes out accidentally, but nothing much. So I wanted to create the curiosity with that. And then book 2 actually takes it forward. It's much more clear now who Hunter is. The audience, the readers know about it, but then the hunter doesn't know about it. So it's more comprehensive. It's more detailed. It looks in the past a lot more compared to book 1. So yeah, that's how book 1 is.
I was going to ask you, who is the hunter? Describe him.
Okay, so Hunter is an ancient being who's been on Earth for about 5,000 years. He has no idea who he is. And every time his powers get to his head, the gods, they send somebody to put him back in his place. He loses his memory every time he's put back into the place. So that was a big challenge. How do I put those 5,000 years in a single book? And those 5,000 years are part of one chapter. There is Rome. There is, of course, ancient India over there. A lot of stories from ancient India. There are battles, ancient Indian battles. Incidentally, he goes to Africa during that time as well. So, and the whole idea, and the editor had told me, create book 2 in such a way that you can get smaller stories out of them. So there are supporting characters who might get a spin-off in the future. That's why book 2 is more elaborate, and it might readers might find it to be a bit lengthy. 100,000 words. Let's face it. The young audience, the young readers may not be able to sort of read it in one sitting, but then that's what the aim is. From book 2, I've already started working on at least 4 more books out of that.
Yeah.
So it's more detailed, book 2.
Now, I know you've added a glossary of terms, but is your books geared for the broader audience, or would people of an Indian culture and heritage relate to it on a more familiar basis than just the Canadian audience, say?
No, absolutely not. This is going to be a history lesson for whoever reads it. Because everything, even the Big Bang that takes place in the book, that's real, right? We can debate about it, but then scientifically it's real, so it's there. So the scientific aspects of the book, even the mystical weapons, I've tried to rationalize it. What could be the source of power scientifically, right? So there is a part wherein any human being who touches the weapon feels the effect. Anybody who's in the close proximity. So I've brought in the radiation part in it, which was not discovered in 18th century. So I've brought that part. The story is set in India using the Indian mythology, but it's meant for the global audience. That's what the whole aim was, creating a global Indian character, superhero character, and I'm sure Canadian readers will also find it. They'll also relate it. It's simple language. It's not India-specific language, so it's very simple language. Yeah.
Now, you've already mentioned it, but I got the impression on reading book 2 that there is going to be a book 3.
Yes.
And that's for sure. Okay. Now, do these books stand alone, or would it be better for the reader to start with book 1 and go through book 2 and book 3, or can I just pick up book 2 and able to run with it without having the background of book 1?
So yeah, book 1 and book 2, that's how the series is going to go. Book 3, I'm trying to create an independent one because I'm going to bring it to the modern world, starting with a war which is presently happening, and then it switches back and forth between 18th century and Hunter's past. But yeah, it has to be book 1 and then book 2 for now.
Yeah, That would be better.
That would be better, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When you got involved in writing a series such as The Hunter Genesis, do you think it could be sustained? The reader interest could be sustained from one book to the other, and how do you go about creating that?
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest challenge. It was one story. When the editor, suggested divide it into two books, we sat down for about 2 months, and book one took about 2 years to be published. It was written in about an year, but then the next year was all about dividing it into two books. How do we do that? What is that point wherein we can divide it? It had to be logical. You can't just leave the readers hanging for more abruptly. You can't do that, right? That was my challenge, and I hated doing that. I cannot do that. It's not a Kill Bill movie, right? That you divide it into two parts just because it's long. I hated that, and that's been always my bone of contention with the editors. Do not change my story. You want to edit it, make it better, do that, but don't let me change it. But this time, the editor was good. She's a very good friend, Mansi. She is from US, and she did a good job in convincing me. So we sat down for about 2-3 months. We would have video calls because she was in US, I was in Canada, and we finally found out a point wherein I could actually divide the book into two parts. And that is kind of a cliffhanger. That leaves the readers asking for more. Alright, it ends. But it doesn't end. So I want to know more about it. And that's how book 2 starts. So wherever the book 1 is ending, the book 2 exactly starts from there on. It's a standalone story, but not. You would want to read book 1 first and then book 2.
Could you read a short excerpt from The Hunter Genesis?
Chapter 1, The Awakening. The man wakes up to a sharp pain at the back of his head. Water. The man groans in pain. He was thirsty. When there was no response, he slowly opened his eyes. It was dark. He looked around and was barely able to see anything or anyone. He tried to move his hands to reach his head, but it was as if someone was holding his arms. The man struggled to free his arms, but he couldn't move them. Seeing his arms struck sideways, he quickly got back to his senses and turned his head to the side. His arms were tied along the side walls with heavy chains, and he was in a dungeon. He looked around with eyes wide open, and soon his eyes adjusted to the darkness. He was able to see a man sitting in the corner. Though he could not see the mystery man clearly, he could guess that the man was some sort of high-ranking officer, judging by the mystery man's headgear. The mystery man was sitting comfortably with his arms crossed, well away from where the chained man was tied up. The man stopped struggling with his spines, stood up straight and smiled. I intended to raise my hand to salute, but the chained man said sarcastically, looking at the chains binding his arms. There was no response from the mystery man sitting in the cell. Seeing that the mystery man wouldn't respond, the chained man continued. Where am I? The chained man's desperation brought a smile to the mystery man's face. The mighty hunter is finally awake, the mystery man chuckled. Why have I been tied up? Let me go, the hunter demanded an explanation. Who is your king? The hunter fired a volley of questions, but the mystery man just sat there staring at him. Never had the hunter ever been in such a situation before. He was indeed stressed. There was a silence for a while, and the mystery man looked at the soldier standing outside the grated door and said, I don't see him having any magical powers. Look at him struggling, the mystery man mocked the hunter and giggled. The hunter laughed along for a while. Suddenly, the hunter stopped laughing and lunged toward the mystery man with all his might. Ha! Though the hunter was hardly able to move from his place, the mystery man was taken aback. He looked back nervously. The hunter was still tied up with the chains in the same place. Is he securely tied up? The mystery man almost yelled, looking at the soldier nervously. The soldier nodded, trying to control his laughter, seeing the mystery man scared of the hunter, who was tied up in chains.
Aha! Is there a moral to these stories? Do you have a moral on this?
It might sound repetitive, but it's easy to possess a power but it's difficult to manage it. The moral of the story is the power gets to your head. And that's what happens to a character in book 2. When he wields the weapon, everybody tells him not to do it because it's not meant for the mortals. It's meant for trained warriors, who trained for years in the ancient times. They knew how to channelize the energy, the radiation from the weapons. He does not do it, and he loses his mind. So, yeah, that's the bigger idea. Everybody can have power, but then how do you handle it, and how do you use it? Yeah.
Very good. What is your writing routine? How do you write? Like, do you write every morning so many words, or do you just every once in a while you start to do a bit of writing? How do you go about writing? What is your routine?
So I'm a bit obsessive when it comes to writing. So I have to write, otherwise those ideas keep pounding in my head. Even at 12 o'clock, midnight, early morning, if I get something, I have to take it out. So that way I'm a bit indisciplined because ideas can come anytime. And I'll give you an example, because I can write anytime, anywhere. Even when I'm in transit, in subway, I can type on my phone. If I have an idea, I'll just send it to myself. I'll save it in my phone. A book of mine, the Metromania Chronicle, that's like the shortest book that I've ever written, but that was my 4th book. And I wrote it while traveling in transit back in India. That entire book, it's about 35,000, it's a novella, divided into 30 chapters, short chapters, and that was entirely written in transit.
Wow.
On my phone. I would just email it to me and then do it on my computer once I reached home. But if I have an idea, I can write anytime, anywhere. That's who I am.
That's a bit of a talent to be able to write anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
Because a lot of writers don't do it that way.
So here's the thing. I write best when I'm around people. When I'm doing something else, I tend to get more ideas. I have a full-time job.
Yeah.
My boss can listen to me. It's okay, Nick. You can listen to that. But yeah, I get a lot of ideas when I'm actually doing my office work. When I'm in the office, I observe people. I get situations. I get people. Sometimes somebody says something and this could be a good dialogue for me. I note it down and I write it in my diary, make sure it finds a place somewhere. My computer has over 80 folders and about 120 odd files. Not all of them will become books, but I hope the essence of those files could be part of at least one book. So I have had an anthology wherein I could not complete the story, so I published all of them as an anthology. It's called Ensemble. 3 more stories are coming up. Possibly, I've tentatively titled them The Fictionalized Truth. Truth is stranger than fiction. Yeah, that's what it is called, and that's also an anthology. So if I can't complete them, they'll become part. But my observations are all there. I save them. I make sure I don't lose them. Yeah.
Where's your book available, and how do you go about promoting it?
All my books are available on Amazon. I love Amazon. I think the royalty part is a bit tricky over there, but then I love it how they've made it accessible. You can print it yourself, you can publish it yourself, get the author copies, get the proof copies, and then you approve it, right? We've got a printing house in Bolton. Every Amazon book is published over there. So I use KDP. I'm a big fan of KDP. But Hunter is traditionally published. It was picked up by a publisher. They chose it. Book 1. Book 2, I've self-published independently. I wanted more freedom, which I couldn't get with the publisher, so I chose the independent route for book 2. My promotions are mainly on social media. I meet people. I promote it through website. I keep on doing search engine optimization for my own website. I do a lot of promotion on Amazon as well, on Google. So mine is more, social media promotion, less physical promotion.
Yeah, you don't go to too many events, or do you?
Not exactly. In Canada, I've attended about 4 or 5 odd events in the past 4 years or so, ever since I've been here. Some of them were paid, some of them I was invited over there. But there are too many authors. That's what I feel. There are too many books coming around, and that's the flip side of KDP. It's made it so accessible now. Anybody can publish books, right? And that means too much of the good work is coming out. I'm not going to say everything is not good, but then I read self-published books for HSD Ascent, which is a literary venture, to review them. But not all of them are good. Here's the thing. So what I do is I spend a lot of time on writing the story, getting it edited, making it niche, making it good, making it pleasant to the reader's eyes. That's how I differentiate. And my cover pages, I'm really proud of them. Except for Hunter Genesis 1, I've designed all my cover pages. They are different. I pick up different names for that marketing push. Everybody should be. There's a book called The Metromaniac Chronicle. I had no idea Metromaniac was a real word. Real word. I had to search. I was looking for a word on somebody who observes while traveling, and Google came up with Metromaniac. I was like, what? That can't be a real word. I am writing about Delhi Metro, and there is a word called Metromaniac, and I found that out. So that's again a step of marketing. Creating a niche cover page, a beautiful cover page, attractive cover page, eye-catching cover page, and then picking up a name that sort of catches your eye. So that's what my marketing strategy is.
Very good. Thank you to author Jasveer Singh Dongi for giving us the Hunter Genesis books 1 and 2 on Writers for Readers. That's our program today. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next month with another edition of Writers for Readers on Chub FM 102.7. Keep on writing and keep on reading.